So I'm a member at these movie theaters, and then I just go to see like random movies. But last night they were actually showing the UFC there,
Oh,
and
word.
it was $25 instead of like 15 for a regular movie. Okay, whatever. But my season pass thing did not apply for it because it was like it's not a regular movie. So I had a couple of friends over again last night. Like Adam, you remember Adam from the
Yeah.
Nets game we were going to? Yeah, Adam came over last night, and we like kind of hedged. We were both on Sean Strickland, like he's a Sean Strickland fan, and we kind of like hedged, and you know, there were signs leading us towards Dreykus later on in the night. Um, it was unfortunate the way things played out. I think it would have been not even just because like Sean lost, but I would have liked to clear, something more clear than that, maybe like a finish. What do you think?
I mean, I think it was still a super close fight either way you score it. I think it's like, was it round two is what's up for debate. Honestly, like I know Sean landed more throughout the whole fight, and he landed more significant strikes in almost every single round. Um, I think even though he's got the cuts, I think he landed more significant strikes and he landed more of he won more of the exchanges in more of the rounds. I think he should win. I was of that mind that he was like throughout the fight that like even though Dricus was getting the takedowns occasionally, I think he finished up being like 6 for 9. He got those takedowns. He didn't do anything with it. He controlled Sean for like maybe 30, 45 seconds every time he got him down or less. Sean was never held down. It wasn't a dominating position. It wasn't anything that, came with offense. So from a pure damage perspective, which is what it really should be graded on, I think Sean landed more damage. And regardless, Dricus and everyone who was on Dricus thought that he was going to run right through Sean. And it was adequate competition. If Sean didn't win, it was a very close decision either way. I don't think it's a robbery. Obviously, it was a fantastic, it's a close fight. Like close fights can be up for debate and whatnot. But personally, I think that the guy who does the most damage probably should win. And I think Sean was landing the more significant strikes in more of the rounds, and it's that simple for me.
Yeah, I gave him 1, 2, and 5 in that fight last night.
Right.
Um, I think those made the most sense. That's when he landed the most damage. Like after round two, Dreykus's left eye was completely swollen over. He was
Right.
saying in the corner, "I can't see out of my eye," and like they were laughing about it. They were in good spirits about it. But yeah, there was more damage done on Sean's end. Sean bled a little bit. Claims it was from like a headbutt. I didn't go back and watch the fight at all, let alone like a headbutt potentially. I didn't see any clips of it anywhere. But overall, what I found most interesting about this card was just like the amount of split decisions there were. Like there were so many. Who else? I remember there being a lot earlier in the night. Um, but just odd. Lots of crazy judging, right? Like Chris Curtis and Mark Andre was a split decision. And there were definitely more earlier on in the card, but that's Canada for you, I guess.
Yeah, I remember that. Like at the beginning when we were talking about these fights, that traditionally I want to give an edge to the fighter who's fighting in their home country, kind of like that home field advantage thing, and that did not play out whatsoever last night. I mean, it was such a handicap to have picked with the Canadian fighters. I think there was like maybe two people who had won throughout the whole thing. I think, and it really sucks for guys like. Uh, Mike Malott, who, throughout the whole fight was winning. He was landing the better of the exchanges. He was really putting on, I don't want to call it necessarily a masterclass, but he was definitely putting on a very strong performance, cruising to a victory. And then out of nowhere, Neil Magny ends up on top, overwhelming him. Mike Malott just exhausted and gives up. And that's a savvy veteran move by Neil Magny, conserving his energy. Now, Mike early in the fight was trying to get him out in those opportunities where he had him, was trying to go for the finish in front of the hometown crowd. So I don't know, maybe I need to reevaluate my thought process here. Maybe they get too energized up and go too far, too hard for a finish instead of conserving. I don't know. What was your thoughts on that one? It was heartbreaking to see that after, I was trying to get these picks, man. It was rough
Yeah.
last night.
Well, I texted you like I don't know, a little bit earlier in the card. I just had like a gut feeling going in about a couple of fighters. Like I think I said it on the show. I had a weird feeling about Sean Woodson against Charles Jourdain. I texted you outright. I had a weird feeling last night against about Neil Magny. it's that veteran level of experience. I think that's a lot of like what that comes down to for Neil. The ability to like withstand a guy like Mike Malott, conserve your gas tank, just have a better gas tank. Next time around, like Mike Malott and Moira Bueno Silva are going to be running a lot before their next fights. But yeah, it's just that veteran, withstanding the punishment, looking for an opening, looking for it, and then finding it eventually and capitalizing. So really impressive by Neil Magny more than anything. He is a great. What would you call him? I would call him a gatekeeper, right? Or would you refer to him as a journeyman?
I mean, I don't know what those terms mean. I think they get like elasticated, to
Yeah.
kind of fit different situations. I think at the end of the day, Neil Magny is probably is a top 15 guy. He knows what he's doing. He's very savvy against really supreme talent. He's overmatched against quality talent. If the guy's really young, he can sometimes out savvy them, but sometimes physical limitations, will obviously limit him as he's advancing, as he accumulates damage, because it's not like he doesn't take damage. He takes damage quite frequently, and he finds these victories through rolling or coming one way through another. So I think for him, he's. I mean, I guess I would lean more towards like the gatekeeper role of if you could beat the test of Neil Magny, and you could pass with flying colors, you might be something special, and that's something to absolutely look for. Whereas like if you don't beat Neil Magny, I think it doesn't necessarily mean you can't be towards the top, but it doesn't mean that you're not quite ready yet. Obviously, he was able to out savvy you, and if Neil Magny's able to do that, somebody who has a same or similar mentality but better physical gifts is more in the prime of the career as the top of the division is, you're gonna have a bigger issue. So I guess that's probably where I put him. What about yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you beat him, you're in the top 15 with where he's ranked right now, 14. Like if you beat him, you're in. So that's basically what would have happened for Mike Malott. We'll see who they match up against Neil Magny next. Maybe he earned a chance to fight up in the rankings. Doubt it. It's probably going to be the next man up fighting Neil Magny. Whoever that next welterweight prospect is going to be. But good on for good for him. Good for Neil Magny because he proves that he can still hang in there with young guys. He's got record numbers. Like he's had the most appearances I think at welterweight. Just savvy, crafty veteran. But yeah, you had that Sean Woodson Charles Rodin fight up there for a second. How about that one? That was wild.
Yeah, Sean Woodson looked really good. He looked lanky. He looked like Slender Man out there. He had like no torso to hit. And it was really difficult for Charles Jourdain to get in there and land anything effectively. Some of those leg kicks were definitely kicking. He looked silly. Woodson did, admittedly, at the beginning of the fight and throughout points, moving so much. But I think a good point was raised maybe by Dominic Cruz that by throwing his hands, you don't necessarily know the angle of which those punches are coming at. It can make it harder to get a read on him. So with that being said, you can't really argue as he put on a pretty strong performance last night. I love when guys have like really weird body types, but they're able to use it to their advantage instead of just kind of fighting a traditional kickboxing fight or boxing fight or grappling, whatever. So Sean Woodson, obviously a guy who's got a really weird body type. He's got the short torso, really long limbs, long legs, long arms, using that to his advantage last night. I think he's going to be a really interesting type of guy to fight. I don't know if the top level guys are going to have as much of an issue with Sean Woodson because maybe they're quicker and they can get in there, and he's that I think if you're quick enough, being a long, I think becomes almost a disadvantage because you have more limbs to move, and somebody can pop in like Volk who's fast, or Ilya, they can just pop in, give you a 1-2 to the body and up top, and head movement out, and it's maybe a little bit harder to get in there. But against a guy who's a little bit slower and you could keep him on the outside, those long limbs are awesome because from kicking range you're punching him in the face. So
Yeah,
rough showing for Charles Jourdain last night and all the Canadian men fighters, to be honest.
yeah, no, absolutely. It was not a strong showing for Canada. Which is fine. And it also, we got to mention, it was a good night for the underdogs as well. A lot of underdogs won by a lot of like really profitable methods as well. But when it comes to Sean Woodson, something to watch out for is just because he's so tall, he's like 6'2" and a half, they said. Every time Jordan went to go take him down, he just couldn't even get him off the ground because like he's trying to scoop his fucking hips out from under him, and there's the other leg. You know, he's going for a single leg, I mean, and there's Sean Woodson's other leg dragging on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then he was really good at just keeping his hips away, you know, sticking his hips out every time that Jordan went for a double leg, you know. But he's a hard guy to take down. The striking was really weird. Like you mentioned, the angles, like he dropped his hand and then his hand's coming up from his hip. And it was entertaining. I mean, it was annoying for Charles Jourdain. I'm sure it was a little annoying for me to watch at times because it's like, all right, now you have to do something. Don't just be defensive. You know, but some of the greats in combat sports are those guys that are defensive and a little bit goofy looking. He reminded me of who was it that fought Floyd Mayweather? Floyd actually said it was his hardest fight. The drunken boxer.
Conor McGregor?
No. That actually is that was a funny one. Oh, Emmanuel Augustus. If you're not familiar with Emmanuel Augustus, check him out. He fought like drunken boxing was the style, and it was just like that, where it was like one moment he's dancing in the ring, and the next moment his hands are up, and he's doing all sorts of weird things. And that's who that was very like reminiscent of. I was kind of surprised nobody really said it on the commentary team, but that's like a little bit of what that is, you know, like that dancey style. You know, he's avoiding things, and not only is he just avoiding shots, but then he's conveying to Charles Jourdain with his facial emotions. Like every time he was like, you know, oh, like the facial expressions were annoying, but you know, it works for him. And I'm interested to see what he could do. And like you said, I don't know, like even in close range, he was good at getting out of there, even up against the cage against a guy like Jourdain, who,
right.
You know, we've seen him be able to put pressure on guys in the past and back him down. Even, you know, last night, Sean Woodson was able to get out of there with that head movement,
Right.
you know, and really good like hip and body control. And like you said, yeah, weird frame, but he knows how to use it. You know, you would think a guy built like that would walk around like a baby giraffe, but instead he's all limbs, but he's moving those limbs nonstop. Right. It's so interesting. Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next, where he goes. Good record for him too, 11-1. He's got a really good record. Yeah.
It's like trying to fight a giant daddy long leg. You know, if you can't get in there and he's faster than you or even the same speed as you, you're it's a non-starter, dude.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of like two things, right? One of them was if you're familiar with like the Marvel movies, was Doctor Strange, how he's always like doing stuff like that with his hands.
Right. And
but the other thing was like wavy, wacky, inflatable tube arm, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, doing all sorts of weird things. But it's entertaining, though. It's entertaining. It's something different, and that's why he was, you know, probably on this card, and you know, with a lot of eyes. It's he attracted a lot of eyes, and a lot of people know his name now. This fight, Arnold Allen and Movsar. They were saying his last name differently on like the commentary last night. They were like Evlioviev or something. It's just Movsar to me.
Evloev. Evloev. Yeah, I said it right a couple of times, and then I said it too many times to where it didn't sound real anymore. Not that it sounded real to begin with, to be honest. It was hard enough to say. And then I said it too many times where I didn't even recognize it anymore. So Evloev, I think, is or Evloev.
Yeah.
Evloev.
Evloev. That's how I was saying it before.
Evloev. I thought that's how I was saying it, but I guess not, maybe.
Yeah, I thought so too. And then they were saying it like differently, and then they were like all comparing at one point, like how they were saying it, and it confused me even more.
Right.
But Movsar like made a big deal about how he wanted to make this a finish. You know, he like is tired of people saying that he's a decision machine in the UFC. And what does he do? He goes out there. I mean, it was only Arnold Allen's second UFC loss, and it wasn't a bad showing. His wrestling just is not on par with Movsar. But he is a decision machine, you know. It's like it looked like maybe he was going for the finish a couple of times, had Arnold Allen stunned a couple of times, but like he's not a finisher. And I think that's something that psychologically Movsar Evloev is going to have to learn to live with.
Mhm.
You know, and something that he's gonna have to learn to live with the social media hate that he says he keeps getting because he's not a finisher.
Well,
Other than that, we predicted that one correctly.
Well, I mean, the annoying thing about Moistar Evloev is that, like, I feel like he could be a finisher. Like, he does have good stand up. He does have, powerful punches at times. He does, have good fight IQ. And unfortunately, he has almost like a too good of a fight IQ in that he's going to do just enough to win, but doesn't have like, it's not that he doesn't have a killer instinct either. Like, I feel like he could. He just like restrains, like, oh, I'm not going to, put myself in a bad situation. But if you're not going to take risks, you're not going to, succeed in a great way. So I think that's what leads to a boring fight. Like he felt that he had enough rounds in the bag that he didn't have to overexert himself in the later rounds, and he was able to just hold Arnold Allen up against the fence and kind of like almost stall a little bit and cruise to a victory. And at the end of the day, this is entertainment. And it's prize fighting more specifically, more originally. So, if your fighting style and if your ability to sell fights sells and does well, you're going to find yourself in better situations, which is why, like we were talking about, not on the podcast, but we were talking about just offline how, you know, Sean Strickland's mindset might be leading up to this main event, last night. And I was saying, you know what, Sean has the most important thing, which is marketability, and he has a lot of people, a lot of fans in his corner. He's going to be fine. People are going to want to watch him fight, whether he's the champion or not, and that's going to continue to make him money. So he's good. I think he knows that. And, judging by his video that he put out earlier, I think either late last night or early today, basically him with his wife or his fiance saying like, hey, like I'm good. Like that knee hurt like shit or the headbutt sucked, but I'm fine. So, on to the next one for him. I think he's going to have a good matchup. Maybe give him Jared Cannonier if he goes out there and looks good there. And, he can get every match at the belt. Like, he's still at the top of the division. Obviously, it wasn't a blowout. He went tooth and nail with the champion, and a lot of people think he win, me included. So, I think he's definitely has a viable case for the belt still, which is good for him. And most importantly, he's got his fans, so he's going to be good. So,
Yeah, money wise, he's definitely going to be good. I just don't agree with them not going with an immediate rematch. I understand it from the sense, like a business sense, where it's been November 2022. You now have Poatan rematch with Izzy. Izzy now has the belt back. Then Sean's in the picture, and it's just so much. It's so much, turnover at this point. And they had a very long, consistent run with Izzy. Please like, comment, and subscribe. They had a very long, consistent run with Izzy. And consistency sells. You have like, oh, this guy's the greatest. He went for a run. Variety sells. So and we've been in a little bit of a rut too with the UFC, where there's been a lot of like rematches and stuff. Like you had Davis and Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno fight 4 times. A fight that was as close as it was last night. If you go for an immediate rematch, there might be an immediate trilogy like rubber match too. Um, so you kind of put yourself in like an odd position from a business standpoint there, because these guys were so evenly matched last night in so many ways. And I think that if Sean would have like stepped on the gas pedal in round two, in round 3 and 4, he would have been golden last night. Like he just kind of was a little slow with those mid rounds. But I don't agree with not doing an immediate rematch from like a what's fair is fair standpoint, but the world's not fair.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes from a standpoint of like, do you want to potentially have like I think it stalls the division, and that's the problem. If
Yeah.
every time that there's a champion, they lose and there's an immediate rematch, it stalls. You could say maybe this one deserves an immediate rematch because of how close it was, and you want your champion to be undisputed. And maybe there is a case for that, but I think there's just far too many fights, and I think the division has been held up for long enough that it's better to cycle it through. I'm not a promoter. For me, it would depend on like what sells better, having a long, consistent champion or having rematches versus having new champions and a lot of turnover and stuff like that. I don't
Right.
know, but I would, based on what the UFC does next, it would give me a clue.
Right. Essentially, yeah, that's what I'm getting into too. Because then, yeah, if they now you have a rematch, it holds it up, and then you have a rubber match, and it holds it up even further. You're looking at potentially like 2 years to whatever damage is sustained,
Mhm.
of the division just at a standstill. And that's one that's already slow as it is. You have a lot of guys at middleweight that don't really accept fights or back out of a lot of fights. Like you have Hamzat, who now thinks it's his time, and I disagree because he only has a win against a potentially washed short notice, 9 days short notice, up a weight class, Kamaru Usman, in a mediocre decision. And if you're
Right.
vying for a title shot, you're you know, like you're pushing for it now and you're not even in the rankings, you need to go out there and finish Usman like early and in a devastating fashion. And he didn't. So all the Hamzat fanboys online got to chill out. Who else? All the Izzy fans, I think they have to chill too. I don't really think that that's a, you know, I don't know. That's a viable matchup, and it's the matchup that makes sense for the money, but I don't think Izzy's going to be back in time.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Apparently, Izzy doesn't. He's not that interested in fighting that much. Right now he's gone on like a long hiatus. Maybe other fighters may retire. They know that it's not a true retirement, but it's just a pause or whatnot, and
Yeah.
then unretire. So I don't
There's
know if he's going to remain true to that, but he is getting that surgery, right, or he's injured.
there's some speculation that his like whatever injury he has is actually worse than he's been letting on, and that's part of the reason why he gave that fake 2027 date. And I guess the recovery may be going better, or it's planned that he'll be back sooner.
Right.
That's all from Chael Sonnen, so take that with a grain of salt. But he is kind of on point with some of that stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. You got to see what makes sense, like timeline wise, because if they're worried about holding up the division, you can't hold it up for Izzy now. So then, who makes a good candidate? Who's the number one contender, if not Hamzat, if not Sean Strickland?
I have to pull up the division.
Yeah, well, I'm just we're spitballing here, but while you do that, it's like Hamzat's also sick, and he had like that whatever illness he's recovering from, and Hamza, when he gets sick, he wants to retire. Like he calls it quits the second he coughs blood.
Well, the other thing is that I think last night he said like I'm ready or it's time or something, and it was a picture of him who obviously looked better. You have Izzy, at one. Or I guess they didn't update the rankings. That comes out on Tuesday. But
No.
you had Sean, who is the champ, and now Drickus is the champ. So you probably have Sean at one, Izzy at two, Rob at three, and if nobody else moves, Cannonier at four, Marvin Vittori at five. Whitaker just getting knocked out. He's not going to have a title shot. Izzy is out for a while. Just Jared doesn't necessarily deserve it.
And he doesn't sell pay-per-views.
He's not going to sell anything. Yeah.
No, and
what was that?
I would like to see Marvin, but that's for reasons other than that makes sense. Like I just love seeing Marvin Vittori out there acting stupid, and I feel like DDP would probably annihilate him.
Marvin Vittori just lost to Jared Cannonier. That's right.
Oh
So
yeah.
Jared Cannonier is really the only other potential, unless you drop all the way to Paul is not going to get it. Would you give it to Brendan Allen at 7? So in terms of rematch, yeah, like if Izzy's out, I think, yeah, it's either him or Jared Cannonier.
Yeah.
And I think Sean Strickland versus Jared Cannonier is a better matchup necessarily than Drickus versus Jared Cannonier. I don't know who else you would do, but
yeah, I don't know. Nothing makes sense except for Sean Strickland to me,
yeah.
and Matt Sawyer agrees.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
with that said, thanks so much for joining us, recapping UFC 297. I'm pumped for what's up next. Obviously, no UFC this week, so it was kind of like a fight night, then a UFC main card, pay-per-view card, and then a week off. But we got a pretty decent fight night card coming up after that. Roman Dolidze,
Nasruddin.
and Nasruddin Imavov, and then after that, we start getting back into the big name cards. So
I think we have Pfeiffer and Hermanson coming down the pike. That's a big one. Joe Pfeiffer was on Joe Rogan. That's a really interesting episode.
Right.
And that's a guy I'm excited to see because he's been skyrocketing through the ranks. So I'm excited for that one. And then after that, we have Volk versus Ilia Topuria, and I'm conflicted.
Exactly.
I'm very nervous. We'll get into that one though when it comes up. But yeah, like Tom said, thanks for being here. Please like, comment, subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. There's football on TV. Yeah, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And you can check us out on Spotify as well. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the football. And let us know what you think. Bye. Au revoir.